The landscape of this late early morning television can be a grim, desolated place. I can't tell you how many times I found myself awake at 4 a.m. watching informational for something like vacuums or facial cleansers and you're asking myself, why am I watching this? Where did I go wrong in life? I think television has become a lot more dull in the recent years because everything is held under such a tight reins by the sponsors. With everything being monitored as it is, people can't get away with things like they used to. Maybe that's a good thing. But if one has the spare time and is willing to wade this through the crap, the associate's kernel of interest can be found. From my experiences, I usually come into across these public access international religious channels. The show I'm going to be talking about is a third variety. This was a little humble show by the name of Faith Buddies, a show referring to interactions between children and puppets, along with Bible stories and songs. Not terribly well made or obnoxious, it was a little more than just a second-rate Sesame Street with Bible lessons thrown in. If you ever seen things like Junior Christian Science Bible Lesson or Wiser Family Puppets, it's sort of a show with a similar unnerving feel to it. Much like Sesame Street, except it leaves you feeling mildly uncomfortable. But that's not to say that it didn't have its unique quality to it, and boy, it did it ever. It stuck to a basic idea, like JCSBL. It didn't evolve or evoke the feeling of everything in the show being produced of this one crazy person. There had to be at least 3 different crazy people involved in the production of Faith Buddies. It was definitely a low-budget venture, but it was concentrated in both monetary and creative sense. The thing about the show that caught my attention was the characters and the unique tone that Faith Buddies had. I've heard in the message itself, important than the way it is conveyed, Faith Buddies seemed to have one of its at least core principles, such as its content was largely the same as other shows of any kind, but it lacked the typical softening to make it more palatable for young audiences. Bible stories were told in the means of narration combined with a slideshow and colored pencil images that would sometimes display graphic imagery or accordance to the story like murdering, people drowning in the story of Noah's Ark, the plagues of Egypt, trials of Job, numerous appearances of Satan, not actually graphic, but notably more darker and serious than other depictions. They didn't even censor the words such as, if you keep an ear out, you'd sometimes hear bastard or ass. Always in a biblical text, of course, but it catches your attention. Although it through with this current time, where 7-year-olds play games like Resident Evil, and none of all that is shocking. So about the characters. First there's the main sorts of characters, Pinky. Oh god, Pinky, where do I start? Imagine Kermit without his neck frill and with a lumpy head and the color pink. That's basically Pinky. Also notable in his eyes of his pupils were slightly too small to be unfocused. Normally this wouldn't be important, except that they had to end the show by zooming in on Pinky's face. This character was referred to as a he, but I could never tell whether or not his voice actor was a man or a woman. Either way, they gave Pinky a bizarre voice, and it didn't help that he would often give his sentences a painfully drawn-out delivery at a random. I can only guess that this was done to ensure that the dumb kids get it, as Pinky had tone boarding consulting. Now, Pinky was like the alpha puppet, and the show gravitated around him. Whenever one of the kids or the other puppets had a question, they would turn to Pinky for his insight. Through Pinky was typically shown a Bible that he would give verses to most of the time, where there would be other times where he didn't mention the Bible at all and seemed to be giving answers with a whim. The first thing that caught my attention was about the show that Pinky's characters had distract of lack of warmth or empathy, which only got worse when the show continued. Pinky would have given the answers, but they would be very blunt and strangely defensive. One questions about hardships were the swifty answer with things like, be careful of questions like that, or don't question God's ways. Pinky was very fond of the later statement and would use it this way to tell people to shut up. The other two puppets were Birdie and Greta. They were the others that would show up if needed. But when these things were the main three were present for each episode, Birdie was a blue hippo and Greta was a green fuzzy bird, and they were both more like dim-witted idiots than whose soul's purpose was to be a foil for Pinky. They would get curious about something, come to faulty conclusions, and so the kids would take them to Pinky to set their dumb asses straight. Pinky would give them a weird, disjointed lecture, and they would tell them to change their opinion. Pinky also didn't shy away from making cheap shots at them or at the kids, but he didn't even dare to challenge him except for when the time Greta called him smarty pants, and this was not met by any verbal response, but merely a cold, hateful glare. I wouldn't even think of a scene between the two puppets. Not speaking would they make me feel uneasy, but they did. Faith Buddies quickly became a guilty pleasure for me. As much of an asshole as Pinky was, I couldn't help but be amused by the guts of this little puppet had. Pinky would tell it like it is from the perspective, regardless of whatever the words were appropriate or made sense. He just would not give a crap whenever he offended people or not. This was very invented in the way in this episode where they talked about sexuality. Yes, the episode where they talked about gays and dedicate the subject when it was treated subsequently in A Hammer on Glass, Sodium and Gomorrah drawings, and bearded men French kissing. But of course, the statistics regarding it, the whole shebang, Pinky went as far as suggesting prison sin violation was a mass conspiracy conducted by men to turn gay. It was funny up until the end when this little girl was talking to Pinky about her older brother who had recently came out to his family. Pinky proceeded to scowl at her for how he was a sinner, destined for hell, leaving the poor girl at the verge of tears. That was when I first started to really question the intent behind the show. It has always been a little odd, but later the episodes have become quite vile and more mean-spirited. This would culminate in the show's last episode. Along with everything else of the way, Faith Buddies started an episode was strange. It would feature Pinky asking questions. How do you feel about blank before saying, today we're going to talk about whatever it is. Followed by a black title card with showing a word like guilt, forgiveness, or in white font. The word for the last episode was predestination. And right at that moment, I had this feeling in my gut telling me that something wasn't right. I had seen the other kids' shows touch on controversial subjects and so on, but although briefly with the more tact. But I have never seen a children's show focus or even mention predestination before, but I must admit, I was really curious as to where they were going with this. I should have known better. The episode started with the same as the others. Bertie mentions the idea and called predestination and talks about it with Gerda and some kids. A lot of goofiness and messing around with the musical numbers and such. Then they go ask Pinky about it. Pinky reacted this in the concept an entirely too pleased a manner like anything has before. A little boy asks him to clarify what he was told. Some people are destined for heaven and some people are destined for hell. A rambles about a power of God, the boy asks. Didn't Jesus die to save everyone? Pinky replies. He died for the chosen ones. The other children had gradually begun to grasp the gravity of this and became more visibly afraid. The same boy asks him about how people know when they're predestined to go. Pinky then tells him, you won't know for sure until you die, but if you look deep in your heart, you just might find the answer. Pinky then starts at the screen, and everything comes to a halt. I thought the show was over, until another card pops up. There is no redemption for the damned. Another slideshow shows illustration appears, but there is no Bible story or moral this time. It was just a glimpse of what the viewer had in store for them, but if they were not chosen. A man and woman were hugging each other before being burnt. People with their feet chained before being eaten. people being killed by spike pillars, people in the lake having their bodies these basically decomposed, giant deformed creatures fighting and even attacking each other. The accompanying music was spiced by with the sounds of screaming and painful cries, the inheritment of the pupes from Pinky, such as this wrath of the Lord, and it makes me happy to see sinners get what they deserve. This horror thankfully is cut short. A few minutes went by as another yet abrupt cut. This time the credits then started rolling, but the scene is zoomed out at the whole set, including the lights, camera, and microphones. The kids and puppets were nowhere to be seen. A man in a black hood and then enters the room and proceeds to douse everything in gasoline before taking the whole thing set down. The cameraman then follows him out as the last scene shows a black hooded man and the cameraman laughing as they toss all the puppets they used for the show into the furnace, with the final shot being a close-up of a burning Pinky puppet. It had not been that long since I last saw that episode, but I have yet to find the answers to what intent of this show really was, or why it ended that way. I had some guesses that it might have been just a Converge parody all along, or perhaps the show's founders got their fundings cut and was in their way of getting back, or maybe it's because they were crazy. I really don't know. And that, my little pretties, was Faith Buddies, a lost cartoon creepypasta written by Cosby B. Daff. My final thoughts on the story. Okay, I've been meaning to, cover this story for a little while now. I think sometime in 2019, I was originally going to cover this story, but I wasn't really that interested in the story back then. Now, I did hear about this story from a couple channels such as Nature Temper. The Shadow Reader actually re-narrated this story, not too long ago. King Spook narrated this along with gory parodies. I know Dave the Useless has done it. The Jaywalker has narrated. I mean, it's a popular creepypasta, and I mean, I've seen a lot of people actually narrated this story. Since this story, Faith Buddies, I decided to go ahead and do a video based on this story because I'm gonna be completely honest that I've seen a bunch of people narrate this story, so I decided to go ahead and, why not I give this one a shot. And I have to say right now that this story, okay, this might be an unpopular opinion because I know a lot of people like this story. I simply didn't really care for this story. I mean, it's not my cup of tea. I'm being completely honest, this story was not really my cup of tea. I mean, it wasn't cliched or anything. Like, it's not, cliche left, right, and center, and then just thrown in there for the sake of throwing it in there. There's none of that, which I'm grateful for that. But I also have some good things to say about this story. So the grammar of this story was really well made. Same with the sentence structuring, and I really do like how this story went out. However, though, I do have pardon me about this. I'm a bit tired. Now, there is a lot of themes that seemed, really messed up in general. So, I'm going to basically say when it comes to the story, when I actually decided to take a look at this story, I actually really did not care for this story. I mean, it's not a terrible creepypasta per se. I mean, I'm gonna be honest, there was some, words and some stuff in there that was mentioned that I couldn't really, say because there were, for obvious reasons, but I would have to say some of the stuff in there that was said was completely messed up. I mean, some of the stuff, some of the concept that they used in this one was completely messed up, along with, creepy, stuff that really wasn't necessary to add. I mean, this seems to be an interesting story. I'm not gonna deny that it's a really well made creepypasta, especially with the grammar and all that. I mean, it's a pretty cool story when I first narrated, but now narrating this again, I mean, there is some, subject matters, I am just gonna definitely say in the topic of, well, some religions and all that. I mean, I had to censor, some words because most of the words and most of the stuff that was in the pasta, I had to censor it just because some of it contained some offensive things. I mean, it's not really offensive, but there's some things I really didn't feel that should have been added that shouldn't really be added into the story. So I didn't really bother to narrate it or anything like that. So yeah, that's kind of one of the reasons. But I at least made it so it's not as bad or anything. But yeah, if you prefer to see the uncensored version, I know other channels who have gone out of their way to narrate this actually have done that, but I censored most of it that really didn't make, any logical sense, or at least I just didn't feel that it was necessary. Okay, the plot of it seemed to be pretty good. Like the beginning of the part of it and all that seemed to be pretty good. It was a really well made story, especially with the ending of how, it shows up, about who this black hooded man shows up and why he set everything on fire and all that. I mean, it's pretty interesting. Although I would have to say that, even reading this for the second time around, well, not second time, but like I don't know, maybe fifth or sixth time around, I have to say, I do wonder who that man was. Maybe if the author manages to, find this video, maybe he can comment on the video and maybe just give me an explanation on who that man was and all that. But I have to say, this story was not really my cup of tea because of some subject stuff that was in this, and I have to say this again, I had to, censor good chunk of it because there's some stuff in there that I really didn't feel that worked out, such as some, stuff having to, some subject matters that matter names I could not say without, anything happening with this video. I mean, it's not going to happen or anything anytime soon. I'm just saying for the future reference. I mean, it's not a terrible story. It's a good one, but this is not really my cup of tea. It's not my cup of tea. I'm gonna be honest. But it wasn't a bad one or anything. I like it, but at the same time, I really just didn't care about this story. But anyways, yeah. I mean, the controversial subjects that were talked about in this, I really didn't feel that they were necessary to be thrown in the story, so I just thought, I'd state that now. But yet again, I know this is an older story, so yeah, I'm gonna give it a pass because it's an older story. And plus, there was a lot of time and effort into the story to make it good, so I'm gonna give it benefit of the doubt on that note. So, anyways, this is simply my own personal opinion, and if you happen to disagree with me, that's fine too. We're all entitled to our own opinions regards to these creepypastas, and this is simply my own personal thoughts. I'm gonna give this story a 8 out of 10. I'm giving it an 8 out of 10 because of how beautifully well written it was. It was amazing, really well made in detail. I really do like how the concept of this story was amazing. And the only things I didn't really care or really didn't like was the fact that there were the controversial subject matters that were mentioned in this story. I didn't really feel that was necessary to be thrown in there. But another thing too is that the concept more or less of, certain things that were going on between, Pinky and other people. I mean, they weren't really that necessary in the story, but at least this one has done and tackled some of the subjects matters really well in this. Like, I mean, it's not really easy to do that in this story, but in stories like this, but this one manages to do so. Okay, anyways, what did you guys think about this creepypasta? Did you all enjoy it? Did you all not? Also, what we have done personally to help make this story a lot better, feel free to leave me know your thoughts down in the comments below. I'm the Queen of Lions. Thank you so much for watching today's episode, and if you're new to my channel, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe because I make brand new videos every single day. Don't forget to ring the notification bell to when I upload, so that way you guys will not miss an upload. And as always, please roll the outro because I'm out.